Meet Sal. It's 6:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, and his phone buzzes with a LinkedIn notification. He reads a post and asks, "Why not me? What's wrong with me? Am I not good enough?" Sal is a program manager at a top tech company, and for the last 6 months, he's felt like his career has stalled. Earlier that evening, he ended another uneventful workday, working out of his home office, which is right next to his bed in the master bedroom. He sends one last email, closes his MacBook Pro, and heads over to the kitchen. His wife is cooking dinner, and his daughter is sitting in the high chair watching Coco Melon on her tablet. Married for 2 years, they just celebrated their baby girl's first birthday last weekend. The aroma of coconut curry with lentils fills the air as his wife shares her excitement about eating more vegetarian meals. They eat dinner together, resisting the urge to check their phones despite the occasional ding. Then they move over to the sofa to watch their favorite murder mystery show on Netflix. After a few episodes, his wife decides to put the baby to bed, and Sal is there on the sofa alone. Bored, he does what many of us do in this situation, and he pulls out his phone. A LinkedIn notification catches his eye. His college buddy, Devin, is celebrating a promotion to director at a rival tech company. Over 150 likes and dozens of congratulatory comments are flooding the post. With each one, Sal feels a knot tighten in his stomach. He has nothing against Devin, but they graduated together. They're the same age, they have the same degree, yet Devin is a director and Sal is a program manager. Self-doubt creeps in. He thinks, why haven't I been promoted? Why am I still an individual contributor? Devin wasn't all that impressive in college, so why him and not me? Is there something wrong with me? What does my wife think of me? A program manager in his mid-30s while all her friends' husbands are making more money and managing large teams? Maybe I'm just not good enough. These thoughts torment Sal, breeding disappointment, insecurity, and frustration. And this has been his pattern for the last 6 months, and he's showing up to work unmotivated, unenergized, and unfocused, feeling like he's falling behind in his career. Today, we'll discuss how Sal can break free from this destructive cycle, overcome the thief of joy we call comparison, so he can show up a better version of himself day in and day out. My name is Abbasi, and welcome to Unstuck. Real people, real stories, real solutions. While the details are changed to protect anonymity, what you just heard is based on a true story of challenges that come up in the real world. And we discuss how to navigate these environments with practical tips to help you get unstuck and build a more fulfilling, impactful, and balanced life and career. You know, I pulled Sal's story from so many of the conversations I've had with people who fall into this comparison of people that they see on social media or their friends. And while it may not be the thing that they surface right away, oftentimes it's something that gets brought up when I dig a bit deeper as to what's causing them to feel really stuck, really feel like they're not where they want to be. And it's a perfectly natural thing. So why is Sal falling into this pattern? Well, it's a phenomenon that happens due to the way in which we are wired as human beings. If you consider how human beings have evolved, we've always been very social and we are always in groups, even if you go back hundreds or even thousands of years. And if you consider what things were like, even the hunter-gatherer version of the human being, the group mattered. And if you were perceived as lesser than others in the group, then there was an actual threat there. There was a perceived threat that was real. You could be kicked out of the group. You could receive less resources due to the fact that everyone's perceiving you as someone who is lesser, which is why we have this natural inclination to get more, to be able to, or to compete even against those around us. And all competition isn't bad, by the way. There is healthy competition, but when it gets fueled with the belief that I need to win, or I need to move up, I need to have others perceive me as someone who is at a higher level in order for me to be happy, in order for me to be safe, that's when it becomes a problem. So we have to be able to discern that. And that's part of what I think is going on here with Sal is he's falling into that pattern, and he's doing so where it becomes detrimental to his overall mental and emotional state, and it's impacting how he's showing up at work. So the recent studies on comparison actually are helpful to take note as to why, or what we can learn from today's modern society and what causes us to fall into this pattern. There was a study that came out in the Journal of Applied Psychology. This was a little while ago now. I think it was 2001. And it suggested that professionals who engaged in social comparison showed less job satisfaction and higher levels of emotional exhaustion and fatigue. So this was a study done for people who within their workplace fell into this category of they compared themselves a lot to everybody else. So it had that negative impact. A more recent study, this was in 2023, showed that people who engaged in social comparison through social media saw a very negative outcome. It had an impact on their mental health. It created feelings of envy and depression, anxiety, insecurity, which took a toll on them well beyond their scrolling up through the feeds. And so I think there's something there that you can pull, right? What does the data show? And what do we know about the way human beings are conditioned, how we're all programmed? Well, it suggests that modern technology has moved so fast, and we have not really evolved yet to be able to handle the amount of influx of that comparison. So consider it like this. Imagine the hunter-gatherer version of the human being. Rather than having to compare yourself to just a few people, you're comparing yourself to thousands of people all the time because of the amount of time spent on social media. So if you're spending time, it's like the subconscious mind, it's happening at times on its own. You don't even mean it a lot of the time. You're going to fall into that comparison just because of the amount of time that you're spending on these platforms. So it's not like you're going on. I don't imagine that you're going on a LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook, and you're telling yourself, I'm going on here to compare myself to others, right? And I don't think Sal was doing that either. But it happens because the mind is constantly thinking about itself and how it can preserve itself and how it can continue to level up and grow. And it's going to do that in relation to others. And so when you have these highlight reels on Instagram or you see all this success on LinkedIn, it can create that disruptive emotion within you if left unchecked. So there's something there that I want to share with you that's really important. I really want you to understand, for Sal, for you, for anyone, it's not your fault that you fall into that pattern of comparison. It's not like you mean to do it. I think that alone is a very helpful context for people, is to realize you didn't do it to yourself. You didn't program yourself to fall into patterns of envy. You didn't condition yourself from a young age to do that either, because how you were raised and how many of us are raised, and maybe this is the case for Sal, is that our parents and others give us love. And when there's another person, a sibling or other family members, whatever it is, that we are competing with, we feel like we have to perform at a higher level to get that love for us to feel safe. So there's both the way in which we've evolved as human beings over thousands of years, as well as how we're conditioned from childhood. Both of those things you did not decide for yourself, and neither did Sal. So that alone, I find, relieves a lot of the pressure. So don't be so hard on yourself and blaming yourself if you fall into that comparison. And if I were talking to Sal here, I'd make sure that he understands that as well, which is to not say that there's something wrong with you because you're falling into this comparison pattern. And the good news is, of course, there is a way out of this. There are steps that anyone can take to be able to not feel so gripped by comparison. The first one that comes to mind for me is there are three components to what I feel is the most important step that one needs to take. It is awareness, acceptance, and understanding. You need to be aware that it's happening. So you have to be mindful. You have to observe that in that moment, if Sal went upstream and noticed as soon as he saw that position, saw that post where Devin was promoted, if he noticed it right there that he was falling into that pattern, all the other things that happened after could have potentially been avoided. but he wasn't really aware of it. He was trapped in it. He was attached to it. He could not get himself out of it. But had he had the awareness of, oh, wow, look what's happening, before he kept reading all those comments, right? Just to notice it. And if he notices it, he needs to do so with acceptance, which is to not say, oh, I don't want to feel this. I shouldn't feel this way. I shouldn't be feeling like this towards Devin. It's okay. This is what is happening. I accept it. I'm not fighting myself for having this pattern in me. And then that third step of understanding is to be able to really understand where it comes from, the way we described earlier here, that it's not something he's doing to himself. It's something that's happened through his own conditioning. It's something that's happened through the evolutionary process of human beings. It's just a very natural human phenomenon. And if he can see it for what it really is, then it won't have the same grip on him. So those three components, awareness, acceptance, understanding, I think it's the first step. And this is for any pattern that we want to break, by the way. Anything that you feel is gripping you and making you feel stuck. If you have those three things in place, you have done some great work to be able to override that program that's running. You've done some great work to break free from the pattern. The second thing that comes to my mind, there's so much in that story about Sal that is wonderful. He's working from home. Right when he's done with work, he has time with his wife. She's cooking some great food, some healthy food. His daughter's there. They just celebrated her birthday. They spend time together. They're watching their favorite show. They're doing their best to not be too much on their phones. So Sal has a lot to be grateful for. And I feel like he's not noticing it. And I find that this comes up a lot for people. I speak with so many people, and they have a wonderful relationship, or they're very healthy. They have so many areas of their life that are working for them, but they don't acknowledge it. They only are looking at the things that are missing. And in Sal's case, he's only looking at the fact that his career is stagnating. And so my encouragement to Sal is to tap into gratitude for what it is that he does have. A loving and supportive wife, beautiful, healthy child. Seems like he has his health. He eats well. They spend quality time together. He works from home. Seems like, these are things that maybe Devin doesn't have, right? And it's not to suggest that we should try and paint a negative picture of Devin, right? We don't want to do that. However, it's just a perspective shift to get out of the pattern of here's what I want, but I don't have, and to shift into a pattern of here's what I want that I do have. Here are the great things that I have in my life that I want to acknowledge more. And I find that helps to really relieve the comparison pattern. It really does, because gratitude, in my opinion, is one of the great antidotes for anything. I mean, when we can be grateful for things and genuinely grateful, not just you write them down on a piece of paper and then, okay, you move on. Really feel that gratitude for what it is that you do have. And I feel like Sal could get a lot of value from a simple gratitude practice. And then the next thing that comes to my mind is, okay, well, Devin has this promotion, and clearly there may be some work that Sal needs to do. What is that work? And to be able to look at it objectively, do some objective analysis here is what I would encourage Sal to do, and say, okay, well, if Devin has been promoted and Sal has not, what are the levers that Sal needs to pull to be able to move up if that is ultimately what he really wants? Devin's doing some things right. And are there things that he's doing that Sal's not doing? I'd encourage him to lean in and get Devin on the phone, or have a call, or even a coffee if they're close. Find out, learn, but do so without feeling that envy within you or that insecurity. It's just looking at it objectively. There's some things that I'm sure that Devin is doing right, and Sal can learn from them. So I would encourage Sal to take some inventory and be able to look at things objectively and figure out what levers he needs to pull. Is it more about networking and relationship building for him? Is it about how he's organizing himself? Is it about his communication style? What is it that Sal needs to work on to be able to move up within his organization? And then the one that I think Sal can definitely find value in, that I would encourage him to do, is to create some rules for himself. Rules around his social media use. I am not someone who suggests that social media is all evil and that you shouldn't be on it, or you shouldn't be on LinkedIn or whatever. No, I think these are wonderful platforms if used well. But if you don't control your devices will control you. And that is ultimately what happened here. His notification completely shifted the trajectory of his evening. Things were going really well. He was having a wonderful time with his family. One notification threw him off. So I would encourage Sal to set some rules for himself and to be able to tap into those platforms on occasion if he'd like to, but to have some limitations as to when he does and for how long. And there are ways you could do that through the actual phone itself, or you just do it through some calendar blocking and being very intentional about when to use your devices and when not to. So I guess the point being, it's tying back to what we were saying about how when historically human beings didn't have as much social comparison that they would see, it's healthy, I think, to reduce it by limiting the amount of time that you're using these platforms. And it's not to label it all as evil and say that, you should never be on it. It's just to be able to make decisions about how frequently that you use it and for what duration, and then to follow through on that commitment. So if I were to wrap this up and identify the major insights and takeaways for Sal here, I'm going to put them into those two categories as we do and recap this a bit so you have something to really take away from this conversation. For insights, the first one, it's not his fault. Whatever your pattern is, if you have comparison in you, envy in you, or it comes up for you, remember, it's not your fault. You didn't do it to yourself. You didn't program yourself. That alone, I find, helps to relieve the self-judgment, the self-criticism, that negative self-talk. So remember, it's not your fault. Number 2, awareness, acceptance, understanding. Those 3 components, that first step, I can be aware of, I'm falling into this pattern, I'm noticing it. I can notice it with a great deal of acceptance. I'm not fighting myself. I'm not saying I shouldn't feel this. I'm just accepting this is what's happening. And then I understand where it really comes from. I understand that there are some insecurities that are being projected. I understand that this has something to do with conditioning from an early age. I understand that this is something that's a very natural human phenomenon. And because of that, immediately the grip has loosened. And the third insight is objective analysis. Can you look at things objectively? As if you're looking at it for someone else, as if, if Sal were the person I'm speaking with, I'd say, Sal, imagine that someone else were in this scenario. What would you tell that person? Get yourself out of it. Get out of your own self-absorption and look at it objectively to be able to discern what are the actions that need to be taken to really help you move your career forward. And then the actionable takeaways are 1, practice gratitude. That is to make it not just something that you do, I'm going to remember to practice gratitude. No, have a bit much more intention. And when you do practice gratitude and you're considering what are the things in your life that you're grateful for, let it be something that really floods your whole being. Really tap into it so that it's something that has an emotional tie versus just an intellectual process of practicing gratitude. And then the second actionable takeaway is implement what is learned from the analysis, of course, right? So you've done that objective analysis. What are the action steps that you're going to take? Make yourself or create a plan of execution where you can take the steps that you are learning from that objective analysis. And for Sal, maybe it was set up a call with Devin. Maybe that's the next action item. And for you, if this is something that you are recognizing and you do that objective analysis, just identify one takeaway and take action on that. It doesn't need to be 10 things, just one thing that you're going to do to be able to help you to progress in your life and career. And then the third thing is create rules. Create rules for your devices. What are the times in which you are going to be allowing yourself to use your phone, and when are you not? When are times maybe where you're shutting off the social media platforms? Maybe you need to create rules around your notifications. This is something I do quite a bit with my clients, is we need to be able to discern what are the things that are worthy of distraction and what is not. Because every one of those notifications is a distraction, and a distraction means you're not spending time doing something else. You've decided that it's so important that it's going to pull you away from the activity that you were doing. But have you made that a conscious decision? Or is that something that the phone defaulted and you've just let it run your life? Take some time, take inventory, and identify what are the times in which I'm going to be on my device, my social media platforms, for how long, and what notifications are actually worthy of my distraction. Join us for our next episode where you'll meet Brian. who just accepted a position as a senior manager of regulatory affairs for a pharmaceutical company. And he has a ton of self-doubt, a ton of fear and worry because of the fact that he's been laid off 3 times over the last few years. And he's concerned that he's not going to be able to perform in his new role. And we will have our guest, Dr. Clara Seeger, on, who will help to diagnose how to help Brian to be able to be at his best when he starts his new position. Thank you for listening.